Hello and welcome to episode 235 of Sutton Impact Family Style. I'm Jason.
I'm Bill, and let's jump right in with the NFL.
I mean,
Any
the biggest.
surprises this week, Jay?
Like we talked about a little bit offline, like every team seems extremely flawed. Like I did not expect the Titans to win and Derrick Henry to go off and them just roll over Seattle like they did, but they won, so I don't really know. If I was surprised by a game, I guess I would be surprised by that one.
I expected more out of the Cowboys based upon what I saw them play against the Buccaneers, and they won a game they probably shouldn't have won.
Yeah.
As the Chargers had a couple touchdowns called back, the Chargers looked pretty good. Dallas did not throw the ball well at all. Unfortunately, that's our fantasy quarterback, so we watched that game with a different eye, and I was shocked that, after he threw the ball over the lot last week, 4 touchdowns, he couldn't even throw one this week.
No, but the Buccaneers are talking to Richard Sherman about bringing him in, so that clearly knows they have a secondary issue. So it's hard to say. I mean, when you look at the divisions, the Patriots beat the Dolphins, and in that game, I'm starting to lose my Tua faith. He just does not look really good at all.
No, and anybody jumped on the James bandwagon probably jumped off the James bandwagon this week.
Yeah, I mean, Mac Jones looked pretty solid. Damian Harris looked solid. I think the Patriots are going to be fine. But the Dolphins, I thought because I remember it was tank for Tua. Everybody was all excited, and then last year people were down on him. But I thought you're coming off, a catastrophic hip injury after COVID, so it's probably not a fair chance. You have an offense built around Ryan Fitzpatrick. But this year you had everything going for you. You've had 2 straight weeks of laying eggs, and he got knocked out of that game with a rib injury that apparently is fine. But I would not be, I've lost all my Dolphins this year take.
Okay.
And then sticking in the AFC East, Zach Wilson is having a rough rookie season. 4 interceptions, 4 completions. For all the comparisons that he's
we thought he was going to have a rough rookie year. I mean, maybe it's a surprise how bad he's been so far, but we didn't think it was going to be anything great because it's not a very good team.
It's not a very
offensive line. It's a bad team.
Yeah. And I saw something, it was like the stat was the last 3 quarterbacks to have 4 completions and 4 interceptions were the aforementioned Zach Wilson, his predecessor Sam Darnold, and then the great Mark Sanchez, all Jets. So that is a rough division, or rough time to be spending, And I guess to knock out the AFC East, Buffalo came back and looked really good this week.
Yep, and to go with the former Jets quarterback, Sam Darnold had a good week.
He did. And I guess we already sort of talked a little bit about AFC South, or NFC South. The Panthers are 2-0 with Sam Darnold. They got McCaffrey. They seem like a really well-coached, really nice organization. The Falcons look pretty bad. Maybe worse than people. Because I think they were a team... People thought at the very least they'd be throwing the ball all over the place with Ridley and Pitts and Matt Ryan. But Matt Ryan is starting to look like he's in Roethlisberger's realm of maybe he's just cooked.
And it's an interesting division because I think we gave it to the Colts because we thought they were the best of the best, right?
Yeah.
Well, they're not.
No, and the Titans came back. The Titans won their game. The Colts lost their game. The Texans, every time Tyrod Taylor's been in there, has been very competent, but Tyrod Taylor got hurt again. But the Colts...
It's a real interesting 2 weeks.
The Colts did keep up with the Rams, who was everybody's Super Bowl favorite. I know the Rams won the game, but the Colts gave them what for, as the old saying goes, right?
Yeah.
Denver Broncos... 2-0, the Denver Broncos with Teddy Bridgewater. Teddy Two Gloves. And then the most exciting game of the week, I suppose, was last night's Chiefs-Ravens potential AFC Championship matchup.
And it was an interesting game because there was a while the Chiefs were doing anything they wanted to do.
Yeah.
And then the second half, the Ravens did everything they wanted to do.
It's true. And Hollywood Brown looked pretty good for the Ravens. Lamar Jackson was throwing the ball. It looks like they look like they're running back you on some level because Tyrell Williams and the other guy look like they could run the ball pretty well after losing their first two starters.
Yeah, and wasn't like they were playing their. In reality, that was their fourth, fifth, and sixth string running backs, and they sure didn't look like it against the Chiefs. They looked like they were to people that you'd want in there, and they were running, and Lamar was running, and everything was on all cylinders in the second half.
Yeah. And again, Mark Andrews, the tight end, stepped up a little bit. Marquise Brown played well. The Ravens look very formidable. Obviously, they gave up a lot of points, but it's Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. And if Clyde Edwards-Helaire doesn't fumble that football, then the Chiefs probably win that game, and we're having a completely different conversation.
Absolutely, that was a critical turnover.
And obviously, just because I feel like the obvious, I need to throw it out from time to time. I'm not a professional athlete, so I'm not going to pretend like I understand. But I've watched a lot of football as of you, and that didn't look like a huge strip. It just looked like a little poke, and it knocked the ball out.
Yeah, it was a poke at the right spot. He hadn't even got the contact yet.
No. And not just because I'm in a dynasty league, and I picked him first overall 2 years ago in my fantasy draft, but he's been a very first-round running back going to a juggernaut of an offense on the Chiefs. He's been pretty disappointing, I would say.
Yeah, he's not all that.
Because you kind of thought he would be like, now you've got Kelsey, you've got Tyreek Hill, you obviously have Mahomes, it goes without saying, but it's like then you add the running back in the backfield, and they were going to just be terribly scary. But it feels like he's pretty much like replacement level running back. Like, he didn't look as good as the two guys for Baltimore who were third and fourth on the depth chart 2 weeks ago.
And I guess we need to talk about Derek Carr, who's looked unbelievable for 2 straight weeks.
And just the Raiders in general. I mean, Ruggs and Edwards are two pretty nice wide receivers with a lot of speed. I don't know if Darren Waller is quite the best player. I mean, John Gruden describes him as the best player he's ever coached, but he's a really good tight end. The Steelers had to give him a lot of attention yesterday. The line looks, for as many rookies as they have starting and new starters on that team, the line held up pretty well. And when they get Josh Jacobs back, that's a pretty solid offense.
It's a very solid offense.
And like we said, Derek Carr, I think over 900 yards in the first 800 something yards in the first 2 weeks. And they're 2-0.
And they beat two teams that were good teams.
I mean, I guess we can have our Steeler 5 minutes now because it is the NFL season, so you're going to hear a little more Steeler talk. But before we discuss the bad parts of the game, the Steelers were missing Stephon Tuitt, all-pro defensive lineman, Bush, linebacker, Joe Hayden. They lost Tyson Alualu, their nose tackle, in the first half. And then T.J. Watt, who already had 4 tackles, a strip sack, and a fumble in the first half, he went out with a groin injury. So, I mean, they were missing 5 for their starting defensive players.
Yeah. And the defense had to play a lot because the offense didn't really stay on the field much.
No. And the Steelers are in a I think we talked about it a little bit offline, but they're a team with basically 5 new offensive line starters in 5 different places. Their only returning offensive lineman, Chuck Okafor, was probably their worst offensive lineman according to PFF last year. And, you have a rookie at center, a rookie at left tackle. And, Kevin Dotson, who had 5 starts last year, is finally getting back into the swing of things. And then Trey Turner, who you signed this year. So, I mean, and they're not run blocking very well or pass blocking very well for that matter.
Well, I think we get a little seduced by their performance in week 1. And maybe we had more optimism for week 2 than we should have.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, as we talked a little bit offline, like when they won those 11 games last year, they beat a lot of bad quarterbacks, and they had a lot of those just weird games that they won to go to 11-0. And you can't. 11 wins in a row is 11 wins in a row. There's nothing to take away from that.
Right.
But when they beat Buffalo, you had an incredible defensive performance by the Steelers, which you can't take away from. But then you got the blocked punt touchdown, and offensively they just really didn't do very much. And I think if you're ever going to compete and win a Super Bowl, like as much as you can have at the Chiefs, where you have this amazing offense, you need the defense, whether it's Tyrann Mathieu or Chris Jones for them, or if you're Brady, and Ndamukong Suh in that defensive line, like both sides of the ball have to carry you from time to time during a season. And if I'm the Steelers,
I don't think that offense is going to carry anybody.
No. And I'm also worried about the development of players that keep making the same mistakes in year 3 and year 4. Like the Deontay Johnson, cutting off routes like he, twice. One led to an interception, one led to an incompletion. That you'd hope those mental mistakes would be coached out of you by year 4 in the league. I mean,
think so.
Typically, play to the whistle should be something that, again, I don't want to sound like old man angry at the sun shaking my fist, but, play to the whistle seems like a pretty standard, and by the time you get to the NFL, you just do it. It's not the NBA. You can't just turn to the ref and cry, and hope you get the call. Like, it's a different league. And
well, one thing I can say for sure, 39-year-old Roethlisberger is not in the same galaxy as 44-year-old Tom Brady.
No. But as we pointed out,
9 touchdowns in 2 games.
Yeah. And Gronkowski has 4 of those touchdowns.
Which is just flat out incredible.
It is, but when you realize that Gronkowski is less than a year older he's like 9 months older than Travis Kelce, it's pretty incredible. I just assumed Gronkowski was like 4 years older than Kelce. I had no idea they were essentially the same age. So it seems less, he was beat up. Usually you can't take time off, but last year was like his get back in shape year, and now he looks like Gronk of old.
Yeah, and I mean, Antonio Brown, Chris Godwin.
Mike Evans had 2 touchdowns. I mean, they're just...
Leonard Fournette. I mean, it's an incredible offense. But the defense has been disappointing.
It has.
They haven't looked like the suffocating defense we saw in the playoffs last year.
No, and I'm not sure, I mean...
And maybe they're not as good as we thought they were in the playoffs.
No, the Chiefs had a lot of really bad offensive line injuries that made it very easy for some good pass rushers just to blow past them and put pressure on Mahomes. And, it certainly didn't hurt. But, I mean, it's also the thing where, you read all those books by Pat Riley, Jordan, all those people that, like, for every Michael Jordan, every Tom Brady that, the next ring is more important than the ring you just got. There's a lot of guys that are really happy to have gotten their chip. And nothing to take, because sometimes you think, oh, we brought back every starter from a Super Bowl winning team, and that's the greatest thing ever. But you look at those Bulls teams and some of the other teams, and I've heard Bill Russell talk about it. I've heard Phil Jackson talk about it. And it's like, once you win a championship, you want to bring in some new blood. You want to bring in some hungry guys in that locker room that are going to change things up a little bit. Even though the common thing would be like, no, let's bring back everybody. But sometimes once people they've eaten, they're full. And for like I said, you get the Brady and the Jordans that are just never full. They're starving 24/7. But some athletes, they get that chip and they're, changes the way they play a little bit.
Yeah.
Maybe they think a little bit more about, post football, and maybe, diving for this or, one extra little bit that maybe could hurt me isn't worth getting hurt this time, And again, maybe they'll flip a switch and they're just going kind of vanilla on defense these first couple weeks, and they'll be ready to go. Who can really say? But as we said, I guess to sum up our football talk, I don't think there's a single juggernaut in the league right now.
Yeah, there's some very good teams and some very bad teams.
And
on any given week, the good teams can get knocked off, as we saw yesterday.
And I think, one of everybody's favorite, look out, the Browns are coming. They don't look like they've taken the leap. Through 2 weeks anyway. And I know Beckham's hurt, and he hasn't played yet, and now Jarvis Landry is hurt, but they seem like they're the same team they've always been. They got Nick Chubb and a good running game, and they can get after you on defense, but they didn't turn into the juggernaut people thought they were going to turn into. And watching the Colts almost beat the Rams makes the Rams look much less impressive as well, I think.
I agree with that.
Farley underestimating the Colts.
Well, it's early on. It's 2 weeks in, but, we've seen a few things now that are indicating we can't get too high and too low after the first week.
No.
And which we did. And we'll have to watch these other games and see how they all play out.
Yeah, I think it's usually week 4 or 5 where you start to be like, oh, okay, I see what's happening here. Barring injuries, obviously, the caveat that you just can't. People get hurt, and there's nothing you can do about it. And that changes the narrative for everybody. But until that happens, you just keep watching.
I don't know if I'm going to watch it or not, but you would assume that the Lions coming up for Aaron Rodgers would be a great chance to get his act together. So we'll have to see. But I don't think I'm going to watch it.
I did watch I watched Aaron Rodgers on Pat McAfee's show. The great Pittsburghian WWE commentator Pat McAfee, who I do enjoy. He seems pretty genuine in his sports opinions. And Aaron Rodgers was basically just sort of shrugging, being like, look, everybody's got those weeks. You know, last year of a team that lost 38-3 to the Saints went on to win the Super Bowl, and that was, of course, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who got beat 38-3 by the Saints. So, you know.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a good sign, maybe it's not. But like you said, I can't imagine that this isn't just going to be a Packers just destruction of the Lions tonight. And yet there's a part of me that kind of wants to tune in because I feel like maybe the Lions have a weird chance.
Yeah.
And then I'm like,
I don't know if I can tune in or not, but as of right now, I think I'm footballed out. I watched a lot of football yesterday.
That's true.
And Saturday.
And Saturday we saw something, we saw a rarity. Alabama almost lost.
Alabama almost lost and I was listening. I was driving around during the first quarter, and I was listening to the Florida broadcasters when it was 21-3, and they were ready to jump off a bridge. And and Florida came back, and so I don't know if it's Alabama's defense or and then Alabama got shut down by Florida. So we'll have to see. That was a very interesting game. Maybe it was just too easy that first quarter and threw them off. I don't know. But if I was going to watch if I'm looking forward to one college game now in the next couple months, it's definitely the Florida-Georgia game.
Yeah.
I have to see how Georgia's defense is, and I have to see Florida's offense and see what they can do. Because that's a huge game for whoever is going to play. Probably Alabama, but I don't even know if I'd say that now. But I mean, probably the winner of the Florida-Georgia game is probably going to be in the SEC title game, representing the SEC East. So we'll have to see how that goes. But that's a game I'm looking forward to. I would look forward to Penn State, Ohio State more than I would have looked forward to after watching Penn State the other night in a whiteout game, which was a lot of fun to watch. I was looking forward to UCLA, Oregon until Fresno State beat UCLA, but UCLA did put up a lot of points. So UCLA, Oregon will probably still be a very good game.
It will be, but, the Pac-12 is, they're already sort of a step behind as far as being a national title contender. And now that game that could have been from two undefeated teams, you thought, you start buying into the hype and thinking maybe this is the year a Pac-12 team competes for the, college playoff championship. Yeah. That seems much less likely.
Everybody talked about it. I know Fresno State played Oregon really, really well too.
Yeah.
So maybe Fresno State's very, very good, and we don't know that.
They very well could be.
We won't get a chance to watch them play.
But if you're, at least based on the last 20 years, if you're a Pac-12 team, you've got to be the dominant Pac-12 team that puts everybody away if you have a real chance against an SEC team. And
even to get a chance to play an SEC team in the CFP.
That's true. Even to get a chance to see it, yeah.
I don't know if we're going to see that. But we'll see. We'll see what Oregon does.
And the interesting thing about Florida, going back to that game, is that Florida had the the QB controversy and the dual quarterbacks for all their prep time. So it seems like they've sort of settled in a little bit more too. Because it seems to me when I watch, one guy's clearly more talented than the other.
Yeah. And they played him.
Yeah, and it doesn't seem like this is... Yeah, exactly. And this doesn't seem like a Justin Fields, Andy Dalton thing where maybe the best thing for Justin Fields isn't to play right now, whereas this seems like, no, this is the best thing for this other kid to play. So... But yeah, rookie QB watch. We obviously talked about Zach Wilson's 4 completions, 4 interception day. Trevor Lawrence had a 1 touchdown, 3 interception day, which was pretty rough. I don't think Trey Lance saw the field very much. I don't think he put up any points. And then Fields looked he got a little bit rumbled around a little bit when he came in for an injured Dalton. And then
so Trevor Lawrence has 6 picks in 2 games.
Yeah. And then good old Mac Jones, just consistent as ever. He's exactly,
He's exactly what people said he was going to be.
yeah. He was the most predictable quarterback, and he's exactly what highest, not the highest ceiling, but clearly probably the highest floor. Is what they say. Well, I guess Trevor Lawrence is technically the next coming of John Elway and, other quarterbacks, but, Mac Jones is a smart quarterback, gets rid of the ball, protects the football, and he's done that through 2 weeks.
And he's in a situation where he doesn't have to be everything in the world. He can just be who he is and do the things he can with the weapons around.
Yeah, and that's the one thing I was listening to, I think Dilfer and another quarterback, I think Tony Romo was talking about, like, with as much talent as Zach Wilson has, eventually he has to learn, like, and he said this, they actually mentioned Carson Wentz, too, as a guy that still doesn't get this, is that sometimes the jump off to the running back is the best play. Sometimes the 4-yard out to the tight end is the best throw. And that, when you're in the NFL with these fast guys and everybody else playing, like, you're not going to get the big play very often. And take the safe play. There's nothing wrong with the safe play. Because safe plays move the ball up and down the field, and eventually you're going to get a couple of shots, but it's not going to be nearly as often as you want. It's a gunslinging quarterback, and they say some guys it just doesn't click for him, and they don't feel like Carson Wentz it's ever clicked for him. So hopefully Zach Wilson can come around and get that, because it's exciting to have good quarterbacks.
Let's see what happens, but interesting NFL season so far.
And the other thing
that's college football season so far.
Yeah. And as a Steeler fan, to bring back our Steeler minute, but to another minute, it's the Steeler talk. What are you going to do? You have two people from Pittsburgh. But, with Tua looking bad, Jameis Winston starting to look a little bit more like the normal Jameis Winston, all of a sudden, the need for quarterback gets much, much greater throughout the NFL again. Not that it ever isn't, but it looked like we had all these young quarterbacks, but now all of a sudden you're looking around the league and you're like, nope, a lot of people need quarterbacks. Including maybe the Packers and the Lions and the Vikings.
Yeah.
There's a lot of teams that need a quarterback. So, what can you do?
We'll have to start paying attention to the college quarterbacks as we come through this.
Oh, I like Willis from Liberty. He's my favorite quarterback. He needs to be the future Steeler. Go another small school quarterback right after Roethlisberger. And he's a dual threat that can really run the football. I like him. We'll keep an eye on him.
I like my guy from Coastal Carolina, but he's not very big.
No.
Oh. But he's fun to watch.
And this will be the last Steeler talk for this episode, I promise. But congratulations to Duck Hodges, who's now a member of the Canadian Football League.
Oh, which team?
I think the Ottawa team, whichever they're...
The Ottawa Rough Riders.
The Ottawa Rough Riders, not Rattlers. Yeah, I had Rattlers in my head. But Duck, who, I think he can really thrive in the Canadian Football League.
Well, hopefully he will.
Because he's a small, undersized guy with not quite the right arm. But I thought he had a good head on his shoulder, and he's very plucky. So, I've always liked the Duck. I'm rooting for him.
Okay, we'll have to follow that a little bit.
Yeah.
I want to shout out to my Oklahoma State Cowboys, who played the worst half of football they could have possibly played, and were up 21-20 at the half after being down 20-7.
Okay.
And they were totally outplayed. If you saw the stats, there's no way you would have thought they were ahead of that. There's no way they should have been ahead of that game. And that was the final score, was 21-20. And the thing I'm shouting out is that Boise State, going into that game, was 193-10 on the blue turf.
It is a cool turf.
So 193-10. It's another 193-11.
Good job, Oklahoma State.
But they still don't look good.
Yeah.
But it was a fun game to watch for me, being an Oklahoma State guy. Talking a little baseball. Pennant races are shaping up. Wild cards are still wide open. Some of the division races are open. Obviously, in the NL West, the Dodgers are going to be – the Giants are in. And I would assume the Dodgers will be in.
Yeah.
And now the Cardinals could be the second team. The Phillies could be the second team. And it looks less likely that the Padres will be the second team because they've been imploding and not playing well at all.
Yeah.
which is sad because I was really rooting for the Padres. But the Cardinals just, never cease to surprise me that they're always in the postseason. And I don't think the Reds will make it. So I think it really could come down to the Cardinals or the Phillies. And
I feel
the Phillies
like
actually even have a chance of winning the East, which would then make the Braves a wild card team. So let's see where that one goes. In the American League, the Yankees are fading. The Red Sox are in. The Blue Jays and the Red Sox have the lead right now for the wild card. The A's are still a couple games back. I think really those are realistically the only three teams that have a shot. And I'm kind of rooting for the A's because they've got two ex-Pirates, Josh Harrison and Starling Marte.
Yeah.
And Starling Marte is actually leading the American League in hitting.
He was good.
Yeah, he's having a great year. Some of the best years he's ever had.
Yeah. I mean, and the perpetually rebuilding Pirates, he just aged out.
Yeah, he did. So we'll see where this goes. I mean, it's gonna be fun. And I've always liked the wild card scenario, and we'll see how it plays out. You're hot. You come in as a wild card, and if you've been playing well, and one of the teams that wins the division wasn't playing well, it's hard to say. But I mean, the White Sox will be in the playoffs. The Rays will be in the playoffs. So some interesting teams. We'll see.
To Tampa Bay, the Rays are good. The Stanley Cup champs are there. Super Bowl champs are there. It's a pretty good city right now for sports.
It really is.
I mean, all three professional franchises are at the top of the game, so that's really all you can ask for.
Yeah. And the Rays will get a little bit of attention because none of the Florida teams, none of them are undefeated in football. None of the college teams. So there's a lot more emphasis on the Buccaneers and the Rays right now. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah. Well, I think the city's in love with, obviously, the Buccaneers because, it's pretty exciting. Oh.
Brady has converted everyone.
Well, we just got some sad Texans news. Tyrod Taylor is going to be out for a while with a hamstring, is what they said. That was just posted by Schefter. That guy just can't catch a break.
No, and he's really been playing well those two games, too.
And he's always played pretty well. He just, he's like the guy, he's always the bridesmaid, never the bride. And then when he gets his chance to start, he either gets stabbed by a doctor or gets a terrible injury at the wrong place, wrong time. And, just a star-crossed player.
Unfortunate.
Yeah. And again, a very solid NFL quarterback that just never gets a chance, and every time he starts to shine, just something comes along and just takes him out. And he always finds himself in situations where he's he's sort of like another Ryan Fitzpatrick, where he's the guy you bring in to be your bridge. And then usually that bridge opens up way faster than he intended it to. So, poor Tyrod Taylor.
Yeah. And I said we'd give some commentary on our fantasy team. Our quarterback that we started was worth 7 points. Our quarterback that we didn't start was worth 6 points. So our quarterbacks did not help us this weekend.
No. And last week they both had really nice weeks, but the one we started had the less likely week. So, just, but as we talked about during the NFL segment, it's a weird year. And I listened to the Ringers NFL fantasy show. And they were talking about, just the dearth of running back. Who do you even want as your running back right now? Dalvin Cook, really good, obviously. And, Derrick Henry looks like he might be back again. But Alvin Kamara's had 2 terrible weeks. McCaffrey looks good again. But, I mean, there's so many good receivers. But running back is just, you just don't know,
Yeah.
I mean, Ezekiel Elliott, not great. Barkley, not great. You really wouldn't want any of the guys in Tampa Bay. Apparently Cordell Patterson, the 30-year-old wide receiver, is now the best running back in Atlanta. I mean, you just go across the teams, and it's just who would you even want?
Hard to say.
Hard to say. But it's a rough year for fantasy running backs.
Absolutely.
And again, as we talk, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, kind of a disappointment. Jonathan Taylor, kind of a, sad.
Let's talk Emmys.
Okay.
Uplifting, Ted Lasso. wins 4 Emmys last night. Ted Lasso, Jason Sudeikis. The series won for Best Comedy. Jason Sudeikis won for Best Lead Actor. The guy Goldschmidt that plays Roy Kent won for Best Supporting Actor. Hannah Waddington won for Best Actress.
Yeah.
And it's a big win for an Apple TV series to win 4, and they've had like 20 nominations.
Was that
the one category where they had almost the whole cast was in the supporting
no.
category? They were all nominated.
Well, I think that show was definitely a benefit of timing. Like I think, almost a year into the pandemic, that was exactly the right show to come out.
Yes.
And then I would also say, and I'm only saying this based on season 1, and I've read that season 2 maybe makes my point slightly irrelevant, but I've never seen a show tap dance on the line between sincere and corny without going over better than this show has done.
I agree.
They're able to get right up to that line where it's like, oh, this is too sweet and sickening for me to watch. It's corny. It just doesn't get there. And, just all credit to them for somehow figuring out how to just avoid that. Because that's, it's difficult to do.
Well, I will say, and I've said this before, I've said it on social media, the Christmas episode in season 2 is the best Christmas episode of any show that I've seen in my life. And that's a big statement.
You were a big TV fan. You've seen a lot of TV shows, so.
I've seen a lot of TV shows. I've seen all the Christmas specials. This one was the best Christmas story ever.
Okay. I know right now I've got my little Rolodex in my head, like trying to think of like other Christmas shows I've really enjoyed. It's far darker, but I really do enjoy Woodland Critter Christmas from South Park, but that's a very different take on Christmas.
Very different.
Yeah,
You used to like Emmett Otter's Jug Band Christmas.
Oh, I still like that one. That's still a lovely tale.
Yes.
And I've always enjoyed stop motion animation with little puppets, and whether it's Army of Darkness or those old 70s movies you used to show me with Jason and the Argonauts.
Yes.
Like it's an impressive feat. The Fantastic Mr. Fox, the more recent one with George Clooney's the voice. Like it's just really cool to watch that being done. So, but
I'd also like to point out, Jason and I both like Mayor of Eastland.
Easttown, yeah. Mayor of Easttown, yeah.
Mayor of Easttown. That was a really, really well done series on HBO.
And some incredible acting performances, and they were all rewarded.
Great acting. It was nice to see Kate Winslow win for her role, and the other two, the actress, and the one for best lead, and the actor, the one for supporting actor. They were all well deserved. If you have not seen that, go back and watch that on HBO on demand.
And I think I've said this on the show before. I've definitely said it to you. I don't think there should be any awards for acting or art. I think it's just a very subjective, sort of weird thing. But for everyone that wants to argue somebody else, it's sort of like the Russell Wilson has never won an MVP award. Go back and look at the people that won the MVP, and like it's very easy to say somebody else deserved it, but then if you're going to say somebody else deserved it, you have to say this person didn't. So I mean, they're all very subjective awards, and everyone that won was worthy, and everyone that was nominated was worthy, and 100 other performances that weren't nominated were worthy. So,
Yeah, it was a lot of fun last night. I enjoyed it. I taped the first 2 episodes of Ken Barnes' Miami LA, so I haven't watched that, but I will comment on that for next week's show. I've heard phenomenal things about it, and I've heard it's really realistic because it shows the light and the dark of LA.
Okay. Yeah, we've been watching a horror movie a night because we're big horror movie fans in our house. We decided not to wait till October, so we've just been doing alphabetical. So we just pick a letter, and that's the letter we watch that night. And I'm trying to think what the best thing we've seen so far. I mean, we've seen we've seen a lot that we've already seen before. We haven't seen a lot of new things.
Is there a new Michael Myers Halloween movie coming out?
There is.
I don't know how.
Well, the last one was actually pretty good. That was the 2018.
Yeah.
And this is the sequel to that one. So, and, I mean, Mike Myers doesn't die. So what are you going to do,
Yeah.
Yeah, we went back, we did watch a little Friday the 13th this year. And I got to say, those movies, I'm a little disappointed for My Namesake Jason. Those are some pretty bad movies. They don't quite hold up, outside of the first one.
Yeah, I still like the first one.
Yeah. And if you've never seen the first one, go watch the first one. Because it's not what you think it's going to be. But after that, they get pretty silly.
Yeah.
Oh, and I watched the movie everybody's been talking about, which is Malignant, which is the new James Wan horror movie on HBO Max. And I get why people enjoy it, some of the people, and I get why people don't. Because it seems like it's a very silly B movie, but it's also supposed to be a very dark sort of horror thriller. And I think he was never able to mend those two pieces to make one cohesive movie. So it feels like parts of the movie are supposed to be sort of like a Conjuring, old school Amityville, like a very psychological, in-depth sort of scary movie. And then the other parts are just batshit crazy that you would see in like a, an old campy movie. And I don't think he ever was able to mend those two together. But some people really have enjoyed it. But, people go to Times Square and they eat it at the shitty restaurants in Times Square. So, taste is a thing, right?
Yeah. I did watch Cry Macho, the Clint Eastwood movie on HBO Max. And I told Jason it's a very sweet movie, a very moving movie, and a very believable movie because Clint Eastwood actually plays a 91-year-old guy who is not kicking ass and taking names. He's 91 years old, and it's very realistic.
Well, that's good to see.
And I enjoyed it. So.
Okay. We've been doing a 5-2 diet plan in our house. So we eat really clean and healthy Monday through Friday, and then the weekends we eat whatever. And we finally have some delivery and some restaurants back open. And I got some Polly G's Pizza, and Polly G's Pizza is really good pizza down here. So I've mentioned them before, but they're back open and they're definitely worth a shot.
And we had some Bartolini's meatballs sent in from Chicago, and they are outstanding. And there's plenty of red gravy to go with them.
And then I guess my last food moment for any local people down here, or if you can order, through Goldbelly or some other service, like, obviously COVID hurt a lot of New Orleans residents, but, this hurricane took out people's electricity for, some people still don't have it. Most people lost it for at least a week, if not 2 weeks. So a lot of the restaurants could really use some support down here. So, if you can afford to eat down here and you're a local, definitely order out from time to a couple of places if you can. And then, if you're not from here, there's a lot of there's a lot of services to order food from. So I'm sure they would appreciate that as well.
Yeah, tip generously because people also went without having their waiter or waitress job for an extended period of time. And a lot of them, the tips are really critical to how they live.
Oh yeah.
So suck it up and do whatever you can to make it as good as you can.
And if insurance companies could at least try to do their jobs, it would be fantastic, and not do everything they possibly can to make you give up. I know that's the protocol for most insurance companies, is to keep making it more and more difficult for you to get anything done that you eventually stop. But there's people with holes in their roofs. You're asking people to put out all this money to stay in hotels with the promise that it'll come at some point. Like, it's not the way to treat people. It's not the way to run a business. I know that that's the way that the business has become, but it's terrible. And I know some people that are very hurting, and they're just afraid that they're not going to get any support from their insurance, despite the fact that they have it. And I don't know. I know it's just soapboxy, but it'd be nice if things that are supposed to work actually worked.
And worked quicker.
Yeah. Because not everybody was fortunate with the way their houses were handled during all of it. So, but not to end on a downer.
No, we still got 5 more weeks of hurricane season, so let's hope we're through the worst of it.
I hope so. I don't think our city can take another hit. So.
No, that's for sure. All right, everyone, enjoy your football.
And hopefully we get a little more clarity on who's good and who's not as the season rolls on. And hopefully our fantasy team steps it up, and I hope your fantasy teams are doing well. Unless you're one of the people in our league, then I guess I kind of don't. So. All right, till next week.